This is Pre-Algebra 8-8, solving inequalities by multiplying or dividing. I want you to make sure that you have your journals beside you so that you can take notes throughout this video, just as if you were sitting in my math class with me lecturing. Thank you. Properties of inequalities, okay? So here's properties of inequality. All right. I apologize for my handwriting. It's still a little rough. Okay, so basically what this is saying then is that if you have two numbers where A is greater than B, okay? Oh, by the way, this is a property of inequality where we're going to multiply or divide by another number, a third number. We're going to let that number be C, okay? And in this case, C is going to be positive, greater than 0. Can't equal 0, which we'll tell you in a minute here. So again, if you have two numbers, A and B, and A is greater than B, then if you multiply both sides of this inequality by that same number C, the inequality still holds. A times C will be greater than B times C. And if you divide, A divided by C will then also be greater than B divided by C. This is why C cannot equal 0, because if you divide by 0, then the space-time continuum shimmies and the city disappears in a smoking hole, and there's badness all around. Likewise then, if A is less than B, reversing this, the same thing holds true. AC then will be less than BC. Okay, A times another number C will still be less than B times that another number C. And A divided by this C will also be less than B divided by this C. Okay, so how about some numbers? They're easier to track. If you had 5 and you said 5 is less than 8, all right, let's say you multiply both sides by 4. Okay, 4 times 5 is less than 4 times 8, so 20 is less than 32. And that's definitely a true statement. All right, over here then, if you had 2 greater than negative 10, then if you divide both sides by 2, 2 divided by 2 is 1, greater than negative 10 divided by 2 is negative 5, okay? So 1 is certainly greater than negative 5. So that holds true as well. All right, let's do an example of this. Here is example 1 on page 449. And it simply says, solve this guy. 7y is greater than negative 42. Okay, this is a one-step equation. You isolate the term with the variable in it, and then you solve for the variable. So what's being done to the variable y? It's being multiplied by 7. So how do you solve for y? You undo what's being done to it. So to undo multiplication, you use division. So you would divide by 7 on both sides of the equation to maintain balance, okay? So over here, 7 and 7 cancel to 1, and that leaves just y greater than, over here, negative 42 divided by 7 becomes negative 6. So your answer then is y greater than negative 6. Okay, let's do another example. Let's do example 2 on page 450. All right, and that says that if you had 1/3 x, then he's going to be less than or equal to 8. Okay, and oh my gosh, it's a fraction. What are we going to do? You'll see. So again, what's being done to the variable? Well, it's being multiplied by 1/3. So there are a number of ways to solve this. The first one that we know of is we undo what's being done to the x. So if multiplying is being done to the x, the variable, then we divide to undo that. So let's divide both sides by 1/3. Calm down, it's not that difficult. I'll show you. Over here then, 1/3 and 1/3 cancel to leave just x. And we have less than or equal to. And over here we have 8 divided by 1/3. 8 divided by 1/3. All right, we're writing that out in line. So working with just the 8 divided by 1/3 part, we keep the 8, we change the divide to multiply, and we flip the fraction. Keep it, change it, flip it. Okay, so now we have 8 times 3, which is 24. So therefore, our inequality says x less than or equal to 24. And that is that answer, doing it the division way. Okay. Now we're going to come back here and we're going to do it a different way. So if we had 1/3 x less than or equal to 8, what's another way of solving this equation of solving for x? We need to multiply by something. Okay, do you remember what it's called? Yes, it's called the reciprocal. Okay, the reciprocal of 1/3 is just 3/1. Okay, so, but we have to multiply both sides by this reciprocal. So over here, 3/1 times 1/3 leaves you with just 1. So there's just the x. Less than or equal to, over here we have 8 times 3, which is 24. So just like that, we arrive at the answer. Now, we're going to get into something different, where c is going to be less than 0. C is now going to be negative. All right. So let's say we had 3 and 5. Okay. 3 is less than 5, right? Because 5 on the number line, it occurs, it's on the right-hand side of 3, like this. So here's 1, where there's 3, 4, 5. Okay, so here's 3, and here is 5. 5 occurs on the right-hand side of 3, so that means 5 is greater than 3. But reading this left to right, 3 is less than 5. 3 is less than 5. Okay, that's how you read this inequality. Now we know that if we multiply the same thing on both sides, then the inequality should hold true. But that's only if c is greater than 0, because look what happens if c is negative. We'll use -1 as an example. -1 times 3 and -1 times 5. Okay? -1 times 3 is -3. 5 times -1 is -5. But now all of a sudden, on our number line, here's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Here's -5 and -3. Here's -3 and here's -5. -3 occurs to the right now of -5, which means -3 is greater than -5. But over here, we didn't change anything, and here it says it's less than. All right, so that means that when you multiply, and it turns out, or divide by a negative number across the inequality sign, it has to flip. So -3 is greater than -5. So this inequality sign has to flip the other direction. And this is not true anymore. This is true. So when you're dealing with inequalities and you're talking about multiplying or dividing by negative numbers across the inequality, then you have to change the sign. You have to flip it. Okay, so over here, we'll put properties of inequalities. And this is going to be where c is less than 0. C is negative. Okay, so if you had a greater than b, okay, and you multiply this a and the b by the same c, which is negative, then a times c is now going to be less than b times c, all right? And a divided by c will also be less than b divided by c. So note that the sign, inequality sign, has flipped. Likewise, the other direction, if a is less than b, you multiply it by a negative number on both sides, then ac will turn out to be greater than bc, and a divided by c will also be greater than b divided by c. Let's do a number example. 8 is greater than 5. So let's multiply both of these by negative 1. So you have negative 1 times 8, and we're going to say greater than negative 1 times 5. So now we have negative 8 and we have negative 5, and our inequality sign now has to flip the other direction. If we had negative, let's do it here, negative 3 less than 9. Let's divide both sides by negative 3. Okay. So negative 3 divided by negative 3 is a positive 1. Okay. And 9 divided by negative 3 is negative 3. So this was a less than inequality, and now we have to flip it to make it a greater than. Okay, so 1 is greater than negative 3. Okay, let's do another example then of this. Let's do example 3 on page 451. And that says a divided by negative 2 is greater than or equal to 8. All right, yes, it's another fraction. But we know how to deal with this now. There's just one little thing that you have to pay attention to and recognize, and that is this. When you have a over negative 2, what that really means is negative 1/2 times a. So you're pulling the 1/2 out of the a over negative 2. The negative sign can be in the numerator or the denominator. It doesn't matter, really. So we make it in the numerator, and here's the 2, and we know that there's a coefficient in front of the a. If we're pulling the 1/2 out, the 1 has to be there. So what we're doing now then is negative 1/2 a is greater than or equal to 8. And we know that we would need to multiply by the reciprocal. Okay, so the reciprocal of negative 1/2 is negative 2 over 1. And what we do to one side of the equation, we have to do to the other to maintain balance, okay? So coming back over here then, we have a is greater than or equal to negative 16. But we forgot to flip this guy, okay? Because we multiplied by a negative 2 over 1 on both sides. So it's not like this anymore. It goes a less than or equal to negative 16. Okay, so don't forget to flip the inequality sign. Let's do a last example then. Example 4 then on page 451. Okay, and it says negative 24 is less than or greater than, negative 6n. Okay, now remember, same thing we've been doing all along. In order to solve this, you have to look at the variable. What's being done to the n? It's being multiplied by negative 6. How do you undo multiplication? You use division. Divide by negative 6. Divide both sides by negative 6. Okay, so over here, negative 24 divided by negative 6 gives you a positive 4. Since we divided by a negative number, we're going to flip the inequality. So it looks like that. And then over here, the negative 6's cancel, and you're left with just n. All right. Now, if you want to write this in normal form, where the variable comes first, go back here and pay attention to the inequality sign. which part of the inequality is facing the variable. In this case, it's the big part of the inequality sign. So over here, make the big part of the inequality face the variable again, and then put the other part. So n greater than 4. All right. So these, well, that didn't work out. These are the answers. All right. So if you have any questions or comments to make about the video, things that I could do better, things that you really hate me doing during the video, send me an email. Let me know how I did. If you have questions, again, be sure to ask. Thank you very much.